Hello, everyone. My name is Clive, and welcome to Secular Sankofa, the podcast of the Association of Black Humanists. It's a space where we speak boldly, think freely, and live consciously. Here we have honest and unapologetic conversations about race, belief, power, and liberation from a Black and godless point of view. Our guest today is Tavian Oladapo, a Nigerian, as well as, I would imagine, a British citizen, dual nationality, like me. Welcome, Tavian.
Thank you, Clive.
Thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you for asking me.
Very welcome. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, and how you got from where you are, because like most Nigerian families, I guess you were brought up and raised religious, and how you got from where you were to where you are today.
Well, professionally, I'm currently working in microbiology at Imperial College Healthcare. My professional history started in the music industry, where I was a singer-songwriter and I was signed up to Polydor Records for a couple of years as the lead singer of a group called Hysteria. I then went on to do backing vocals for a few known names and stuff, and then doing some solo work. Gave that up, went into the mobile phone business for a little while, gave that up before I ended up working in science. So that my introduction to the scientific world came a bit late from a professional point of view anyway. I am obviously a British citizen of Nigerian heritage. My parents took me to Nigeria when I was 6, and I spent the next 13 years being educated and immersing myself in the culture of my country. Like I said, I then went to study in the United States before I ended up coming back to England. My journey away from religion was quite a strange one, in the sense that I decided to read the Bible in its entirety at the age of 15 because I had some questions of my own, because I was raised as a Christian. And so I wanted to understand, because my dad gave me a book about the Crusades, and I wanted to understand the battle between the Christians and the Moors in Spain at the time, because I was of the impression that they supposedly served the same God. So I was just curious. I wanted to know, why are these people fighting each other if they claim to worship the same God? I'm going to go and read the Bible, because I'm sure they've just misunderstood God's message and this is the work of humans. Well, that kind of opened a can of worms, really, because once I began to read the Bible, there were just so many things that made no sense to me from a compassionate and logical point of view. And after 9 months, I was confused. I was actually quite confused, quite upset, because I thought maybe I'm missing something. So I proceeded to read it again. And 2 years after that, I just concluded that based on what I understood at that time of the mythology of different regions in the world, that the Abrahamic religion is just a regional mythology that has somehow become a worldwide religion through the machinations of people. And obviously, once you begin to understand the story of the Roman Empire and the influences that Rome had on Western Europe, well, Europe as a whole, to be honest, it begins to make sense.
Yeah, for me, these are just stories, which
Yeah.
specific to, well, it must have started off as being very specific to one set of people.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
it spread. It's like wildfire down the years.
Mhm.
So, of course, it was promoted by, as you said, the Romans, who were the world superpower at the time. And so here we are.
I was just going to add that once you study religion in the ancient Near East, you begin to understand the environment in which these mythologies were birthed and promoted, and how they evolved over time. We now have very good evidence that the ancient Israelites themselves originally subscribed to a pantheon of gods. And as a matter of fact, the god Yahweh is not the original god of the ancient Israelites. It is actually El, the head of the Canaanite pantheon. And so you then begin to understand that they kind of they were making it up as they go along. And in fact, Yahweh was a later addition to their mythology, if you like. And so just like any other religion of the world, it is specific to a region, and then it just evolved.
And they borrowed a lot from the religions around them, from the myths and mythology.
Of course. I mean, on my channel, we're currently working on an animated video about the Tower of Babel, which we're gonna call the Tower of Babel, which kind of explains how the story doesn't really make sense and what we know about the evolution of language and its origins in Africa. But anyway, that's a story for another day.
Absolutely. We'll come round to all these other bits and pieces as time goes on. But for today, thanks for introducing yourself. And as you said, you are now doing science as your main occupation. So, what science topic do you wish that schools would teach better?
Biology, yeah, evolutionary biology, if I'm being even more specific, because I think that we need to understand that we are inextricably linked to the natural world. We are not separate from it. And because I work in microbiology, I understand the kind of the balance that we share with other organisms in the world. So, say, for example, the human body, we are literally an ecosystem on legs. So, there are bacteria, there are viruses, there are archaea and fungi that call our body home. And without some of these microorganisms, we could not exist. Just a little plug on my channel again. We did an episode called Walking with Microbes, which is kind of like a take on Walking with Dinosaurs, where we explain some of the microorganisms that live on the human hair and on the human face. We are part of the natural world, and I really do think that we really don't teach biology as well as we should. To let people understand that we are part of the natural world. We are not separate from it, and we actually depend on a lot of organisms of the natural world in order to exist, and that we are just a latest arrival in the grand scheme of things of animals that once called our planet home.
Well, the thing with science as well is the way they teach it in schools is like it's all sorts of different blocks of knowledge. You know, you have chemistry over here and physics over there, and biology over in the other place. Whereas really and truly, it's all about finding out how does the universe work, how does life work, how does the world work. And there's so much scope for putting it all together and teaching it as a package rather than splitting everything up. I mean, you take the evolution, like you said, evolution only really comes into play once life has got started. But some people seem to think that that explains the start of life. It doesn't do that at
Well, it
all.
doesn't, and I tend to think sometimes that is done deliberately in order to just muddy the water.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thinking about your own personal interests, I know you're very, very much interested in the fossil record and back in the prehistoric times, Cambrian, Precambrian, and so on and so forth. So, what would you say is some of the coolest or best fossils you've ever seen, or a museum where you've seen a very good display where you would recommend people to go and have a look?
Wow. Okay. So dinosaurs get most of the press because of pop culture and all that. But I actually find a lot of other prehistoric animals amazingly fascinating because we now understand where dinosaurs came from, and we understand that there were other prehistoric animals that preceded dinosaurs. And in fact, the fossil history of crocodilians, for example, who are cousins of dinosaurs. Just going to your question about what was the most amazing fossil that I saw, for years I'd read about the fossil of a prehistoric crocodilian called Sarcosuchus. I knew that it was in the Natural History Museum in Paris, and I knew that this thing was supposed to be monstrous. I mean, imagine a 40-foot long crocodilian. And so I went in 2019 with a couple of my friends. One of my friends, he's French, he's a geologist, and we went to see this specimen. And Clive, I have to tell you, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was excited, I was sweating, and all I kept saying is, "Oh my God," which is kind of ironic considering I don't believe in God. Oh my God, it's effing huge. I was just so blown away with the size of the thing that apparently lived alongside dinosaurs. And so for me, that was one of the most exciting fossils that I'd ever seen. I mean, obviously, there are others that I've seen in the Natural History Museum in England, but that for me was the top. That for me was the most excited I'd been because you see modern crocodiles and you think, yeah, okay, they're big, and I wouldn't want to run into one in a dark alley. But I mean, Sarcosuchus was just immense. It literally made modern crocodiles look like, little lizards or something. And so for me, that was a top. I've seen loads of dinosaurs in through my time, but Sarcosuchus was the one that really kind of got my juices flowing, if you like.
It sounds like a monster. I must say, though, I'm always a little bit curious how some animals manage to survive, Chicxulub incident when, I'm wondering how crocodiles manage to survive because they're fairly big creatures. So a lot of the bigger creatures died out.
I think it had a lot to do with the ones that were semi-aquatic. So, because the crocodilian family is a lot bigger than people realize. I mean, we now have a few. In antiquity, in prehistory, there were hundreds of different crocodiles. There were terrestrial crocodiles that never went in the water. There were vegetarian crocodiles that only fed on plants. There were bipedal crocodilians. There are hundreds of different crocodilians. Some of them didn't even look like the crocodilians that we excuse me that we see today. So I think a lot of it had to do with size, and a lot of it also had to do with the ones that were semi-aquatic, because even dinosaurs, I mean, most of them perished, but some of them survived, which is why we now have birds. And so the same thing applied to crocodiles. Some of the family survived and then gave birth to the modern crocodiles that we see today. And that's as much as I understand the reasons why some of these animals survived. But was it 75% of land animals perished during the Cretaceous? It's extinction is a fascinating thing that I've always been really interested in, because there's been more than one. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that's the answer to that question as far as I
Yeah,
know.
but if the scientists could clone one of these extinct species, should they do it? Is it an
No,
ethical thing to do?
No, I don't think so, because I think the environment that you are trying to introduce these animals to is most probably going to be alien, excuse me, to what they're used to. And more importantly, we've done a terrible job of looking after the fauna that we happen to live with. So what would be the point of bringing others into existence? No, I think, is it ethical? No, because I don't think we've been the custodians of the natural world that we should be. And a lot of that has a lot to do with the fact that we think everything here has been put here for our purposes. And religion plays a massive role in that.
Of course.
So no, I would love to see them. You know, I would love to see pterosaurs flying in the sky. I would love to see numerous different species of dinosaurs and pariasaurs, and aetosaurs. There are so many prehistoric animals that I would like to see. There were rhinos, hornless rhinos, much bigger than elephants, called Paraceratherium. I would love to see those. I would love to see terror birds. But would I kind of sanction the idea of us being able to? I don't even think such a thing is even doable, to be honest with you. They won't be quite what they were.
No,
Do
no.
you know what I mean? They won't be quite what they were. What they were. They would be a mishmash of us borrowing from the whatever we can extract from their DNA, if we can even get that, and then obviously merging them with a modern relative, and then it's not quite the same.
Yeah. So anyway, we went from dinosaurs, then you had the rock that fell on in Chicxulub and pretty much wiped everything out. And
Well, almost everything, yes.
yeah, almost. So but for that, perhaps we'd never have got the rise of the mammals, which and we are one of,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
eventually evolved.
yeah.
So if we went to another world altogether, we got into our starship and we went to another world, do you think intelligent alien life exists somewhere?
Well, why not? We're here. And if you play a numbers game and you look at the amount of star systems with planets, and we now know that the building blocks of life can be found all around us in the cosmos. They've been found on other planetary bodies. So and obviously there's the idea that maybe the building blocks of life were brought to this planet on a asteroid or a comet. Who knows what happens somewhere? I mean, the numbers are astonishing.
Yeah.
Hundreds of billions of stars with gargantuan amount of planets in these star systems. I would be surprised if there is not intelligent life on other planets, or just life. It may not even be intelligent, but just life. So I think it's highly likely. I think it's highly likely. I think the numbers would suggest that it is a strong possibility. Now, what kind of life it is, I don't know. I really wouldn't want to guess whether it's intelligent or not.
Yeah, the numbers are incredible.
Astonishing.
And the distance between star systems, is just,
It's insane. What is it that our nearest stellar neighbor is Proxima Centauri,
yes.
4.2 light years, I think it works out about 26 trillion miles.
Mm.
We can't get there, not with current technology anyway. And so the distance is, and that's just our nearest neighbor. It's just, I mean, yeah. Anyway, so the idea that, it was all created for us specially, and we were put on this planet by the divine genie because he loves us. Yeah, it's just nothing but just our ego, waving to us in the mirror.
Yeah, it's about time we put some of those ideas out of our heads, and decide to be a little bit more grown up in our thinking, because I think all those ideas were in the infancy of our species, as people like to say, and it's about time we grew up and forgot about all this. Everything was made for us.
We're not quite there yet because think of it like this. Dinosaurs were on this planet for 150 million years, non-avian dinosaurs anyway. They're like what, 300,000 years? We're still pooping in our nappies. So so to speak, as a species. Yeah, we've done amazing stuff with technology and stuff, but when you think about the time frame of different animals having existed on this planet, still we haven't even began to crawl, which is fascinating and humbling in equal measure. And because we come from the fearful infancy of our species, as you said, where we needed to try and make sense of the world we live in, and therefore because it's scary, it's unpredictable, and you never know what's round the corner, we needed a celestial nanny. And a lot of people still need this celestial nanny because life is scary quite a lot of the time. And I don't think our species is even close to getting anywhere near being able to say, okay, you know what? I'm lucky to be alive. It's not through any divine will, if you like. And I want to face life squarely on its own terms. I don't think we're ready for that yet. I mean, look at what's happening in Africa, for example, where we're still, fundamentally a very, very, very religious people, and a religion that's not even our own. I mean, what an irony.
Yes, it's unfortunately is holding us back. That's my thinking.
I agree.
Yeah, as long as we, as a people, prioritize all that religious stuff, it really is holding us back.
It kills our curiosity.
Yes,
That's the one thing that really bugs me, is that it stops you from asking pertinent questions about our existence and even just to solve certain problems. Just to kind of digress a little bit, people often talk about morality in the same sentence as the Abrahamic God. And I always say to them, the idea that we did not know what was right or wrong in Africa before we were introduced to Christianity or Islam is insulting. And if anything, if anyone who studies African ethics, just a little bit, just a cursory look at ethical philosophies in African societies, you will be amazed. We're talking about the humanist society right here. The fundamental principles that underpinned most African ethical philosophies was humanism.
yes,
It was humanism, the idea that what's good for the collective good and the golden rule, if you like. We have a saying where I come from in Nigeria, which is kind of like "Ìwà rere lẹ̀ṣọ́ ènìyàn," which essentially means a good character is a man's treasure.
yes,
And it's a very, very old adage. We knew that how you interact with your fellow human beings and what's good for all is the thing that holds a community together, until somebody comes along with this other ideology, says, oh, no, you have to believe these really ridiculous stories. And that's what tells us about your character and your virtue. And if you don't believe that Yahweh is the God of Israel and Jesus, his son, came and got nailed to a piece of wood and died for your sins, therefore you're not a good... I'm sorry, it's insane.
yeah, totally, totally. No, we had advanced ideas. You look at the concept of, and it's not only that concept, but concept of Ubuntu in South and Eastern Africa. I mean, this is a very fantastic concept and idea that is really we should be trying to spread throughout the world. This is not something that somebody has to come and tell you.
Here's the interesting thing, Clive. Christopher Hitchens in his lifetime would always say that if the ancient Israelites did not know right or wrong, if you take the story to be truthful, when they left allegedly Egypt and proceeded to go to the foot of Mount Sinai, they would have never got there. But I even go further back than that. If human beings didn't know what was right from wrong before they left Africa, they would have never been able to colonize the rest of the world. It wouldn't have happened. I'm not saying they were paragons of virtue by any stretch of the imagination, but they understood that we have to do this as a group. And so the ones that originally left would have left as a group, and as they dispersed amongst themselves, it would have been a cooperation, if you like. They had to cooperate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to make any progress because we as a species, we don't have, very sharp teeth or big teeth and
No,
we don't
no.
claws and stuff like that. Our superpower is cooperating with other human beings to make progress in life. So the idea that you need somebody, some sky daddy person to come and tell you is just ridiculous. I mean, are they suggesting that people used to wake up in the morning and say, well, which of my neighbors am I going to kill today?
Exactly. I mean, there were probably people who thought like that, you're psychopaths and so on, Yeah, there were probably a few, but admittedly, most people were just decent people trying to survive in a harsh environment, and they realized that they needed the cooperation of their neighbors. Our body is a model of cooperation between us and organisms that live on us. We can't even digest all our food by ourselves. We need to cooperate with the bacteria in our gut, some of them to give us some of the stuff that we need, so it's all out there.
No, it's amazing what you learn or you pick up from science researchers. That there's more foreign DNA in our bodies, for instance, than human DNA, that kind of thing. Or
Well, not more foreign DNA. I mean, here's the thing. We used to think Homo sapiens, special species, created by, the celestial daddy, blah, 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 blah. But we now know that actually we are a hodgepodge of different species of humans. So we now understand that at one time there were probably around 6 different species of humans living together at the same time. And even our history in Africa now shows that even in Africa, there were all these different hominins running around, and we're digging up fossils. And we used to think, okay, when we discovered that there were different hominins running around, we thought, oh, they were different to us. We couldn't have interbred. We now know that we did. We now know that virtually all humans retain snippets from archaic hominins, and that includes Africans. There used to be the thing that they will say non-Africans have Neanderthal DNA, Africans do not, but we do. We just have a smaller proportion of Neanderthal DNA because the humans that left Africa and went to Europe and parts of Asia who met Neanderthals and interbred with them, some of them came back to Africa and introduced the Neanderthal DNA into Africans. But what's even more interesting is even in Africa, there is evidence of all these different ghost populations, in some cases where we can see the DNA, but we don't actually know what species it belongs to because we haven't found a fossil to go along with the DNA. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Ihoileru skull in Nigeria.
not quite sure about that one. Could you elaborate a bit?
It's an archaic fossil that was discovered in Ondo State in Nigeria in 1965. And it is human, but not like us human. It's an archaic human, and the date says that it was only about 13,000 years old. It looks much older, but the dating says that this hominin, this human, was 13,000 years old. So that would suggest that up until 12,000 years, there were still some of these archaic humans roaming around. And it's a fascinating with all the different fossils that we have from parts of Africa, all the Australopithecines that we have, all the early human fossils, Homo erectus, Homo habilis. It's an incredible story that we are just what's left of a once diverse and numerous family. And I find that quite humbling.
Yeah, and even we didn't nearly make it because I think we were down to about 5,000 individuals at one time.
You were talking about the Toba eruption.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea that 70,000 years ago, I think it was, that there was a massive eruption and the human population would dwindle to, I think it was less than 10 or 5,000. I mean, I've heard that, but then why is that so surprising? Neanderthals are gone. Denisovans are gone. All the other members of our Homo genus are gone. And who's to say we might not even still go that way?
Well, I think with a buffer of about 8 billion people, I think we might just survive, provided we keep making progress in science and other things. And talking about science, what scientific breakthrough do you wish would happen in your lifetime?
It's interesting. Because I work in disease or with disease, it would probably have to be a permanent cure for malaria, because malaria kills more African children, well, specifically Nigerian children, than anywhere else in the world. And then when you understand that the malaria parasite is what we call an obligate parasite, which means that in order for it to go through its life cycle, it has to infect a human and a female mosquito. That's actually what it has to do naturally. It has no choice in the matter. That's how they go through their life cycle. And so if there was a way that they can stop these specific human parasites, they've evolved to live in humans, but unfortunately they kill lots of children in the process. And so for me, I mean, I know there are anti-parasitic drugs and so on, but if they could just stop malaria parasites from being able to infect humans, period. For me, I mean, yeah, there are other diseases that probably kill more people, cancer, for example. But I don't know. I've had a thing for malaria for a long time because I understand how many children it kills. I understand that when you look at it through a religious lens, it's insane that you think that somebody who you claim is benevolent will create an organism that has to infect humans and mosquitoes and in the process kills millions of children. And that's the one pathogen that I'm most passionate about. So yeah, in answer to your question, it will be a way of not even having to cure malaria, but to just stop people getting it, period.
Yeah, you would think that that is something which is achievable, is possible to do.
Well, it's difficult again because the human malaria parasite is what I call a microscopic ninja. It has, again, which kind of debunks the whole idea of a benevolent deity. It has many tools up its sleeve that it uses to fool and evade our immune system. So again, you want to ask the question, if you want to talk about a benevolent God, did God give the parasite those tools? They can hide from our immune system. They can fool our immune system to make it think that it's friendly rather than a foe. They have all these different tricks, and even when we discover anti-parasitic drugs, they evolve to resistance to the drugs. Do you see what I mean? It's not just one weapon kills them. It's just we kill them with one weapon, and they say, "Oh yeah, watch this," and they come up with something else. And that's evolution at work, Clive. That's evolution at work because it's an arms race. It has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with sin. It has nothing to do with somebody eating a magic fruit in a garden because a talking snake told them to. These are just ridiculous stories that we made up because we didn't understand what was going on. And this is why I find malaria parasites fascinating, because they actually are a perfect example of the evolutionary arms race between pathogen and host. You know, we find a drug that works. They go, okay, they go into their locker. Some of them will then evolve a countermeasure, and it just goes on and on and on and on. So this is why I would say I would like a way where if we could just, it's not going to be easy to be able to stop human malaria parasites from infecting humans, because there are about 200 different malaria parasites and they are all specific to their hosts. But strangely enough, you know, they infect other mammals, they infect birds. But what's interesting is the malaria parasites that infect humans are most closely related to malaria parasites that infect other primates.
Right.
Because we're related.
Yeah.
That's what you would expect. Plasmodium falciparum is the most deadliest malaria parasite, jumped from gorillas. And so I think there are about 5 or 6 of them that infect humans because they've evolved to infect humans, but they're most closely related to the ones that infect other primates. So if they were already infecting other primates, and we are primates, it's a small jump, isn't it?
Absolutely. Listen, it's been a fascinating discussion.
Oh, you
I
know, I
hope
love chatting about this stuff.
Yes, I do hope the human race wins that particular arms race with the
So do I.
mosquitoes.
So do
Yeah,
I.
it's it's really important to save all us from being ravaged, to death by these little critters.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming
Yeah,
along.
you know I love to chat about this stuff. So yeah, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Yes.
asking me.